Bill Burton, a former deputy White House press secretary under President Obama, of course, and now senior strategist for Priorities USA, and David Winston, a Republican strategist and advisor to House Speaker John Boehner. Welcome both.
Good to see you.
David, they are certainly outliers in this campaign so far. Michelle Bachmann was briefly a front runner, but after her debate performances. But this does show a real problem on foreign policy.
Well,
with some of the Republican candidates.
Bear with me. I mean, those interviews were not with the front runners, right? I mean, I'm sorry, but Ron Paul's statement is just absurd. I mean, Peter King, who's chair of the committee, came out and said, look, this was a good
Mitt Romney congratulated.
And virtually every other Republican has said, look, this was a positive accomplishment for this country. They've given appropriate deference to the president and to the intelligence community for what they did. I have to say, watching that clip and watching Ron Paul, I was taken aback by that. That doesn't represent where Republicans are at.
With all the successes, though, on foreign policy, particularly their withdrawing from Iraq on schedule, they have had, obviously, other big problems and challenges continue in Afghanistan. But these Al-Qaida successes, the bin Laden death, yet this doesn't seem to be registering with the voters because it really is the economy bill. And on that, the president is vulnerable.
Well, it's remarkable that the president has in many ways taken national security off the table as an issue altogether. I don't think a lot of folks would have thought 3 years ago that at this point in the presidential race, President Obama would be sort of untouchable when it comes to national security. But what this particular instance says about the president as a man and as a leader is that he's a strong leader. He's someone who can coolly and calmly sit in the Oval Office and do what it takes to keep the American people safe. And you wonder, can a guy like Mitt Romney fill that same kind of role? We've seen Mitt Romney's leadership, and it's been a failed record of leadership on the economy in Massachusetts. So that's what I think this really says, is what kind of leader is Barack Obama?
David, I think you would disagree with the failed record in Massachusetts, but let me stipulate that and quickly take you, because we're waiting to hear from the president shortly, in his live interview with Michael Smerconish. Let me take you to Chris Christie, because we haven't chatted in the last couple of days about that, you and I. Do you think that this is a real deal, or like my colleague Lawrence O'Donnell was telling me yesterday on the program, that this is really a fundraising campaign for his reelect?
No, I think there's a lot of pressure on him, and there are a lot of people talking to him, and so what's happening to him is basically he wants to sort of listen to folks and give them a chance to have their say. I still think he's a no, but he has people who he values who are trying to push him. And if I may, by the way, again, if you want to contrast economic records, I contrast Romney's with the president's any day at this point, given the unemployment rate. Sorry.
What does it say, though, about Mitt Romney that people are still pressuring, important people are still pressuring Chris Christie to get into the race? What's wrong with Mitt Romney? What's wrong with Rick Perry, the other two leading candidates?
I don't think it's necessarily that. I think Chris Christie is someone that people find very attractive, and obviously there are folks in the contributor community, donor community, who really like him, who really want him to think about this. So I wouldn't say this is a negative reflection on the two front runners, or three at this point if you include Kane. I think it's a sense of that's a positive statement about Chris Christie.
I don't know, David.
What about Chris Christie? Is he the toughest possible opponent for the president in that he's got this sort of real deal flavor?
I don't know that Chris Christie is any tougher than any of the other Republicans. But what it says about Mitt, if this were a movie, it would be called Mitt Romney, They're Just Not That Into You. If you look at the course of this campaign, they've floated everybody from Mitch Daniels to Rubio to Jeb Bush to Pataki, on and on and on. And it's not because all those candidates would be so great in the Republican primary. It's because Mitt Romney may well end up the Republican nominee, but it's not because he's their favorite choice on the Republican side. It's because they've exhausted all other possible options.
But is this a case of sort of like high school dating, that when you finally do settle on your spouse or your intended, that you forget about all the other guys that came before?
No, I just think that this is a situation. There are a lot of attractive folks there, out there, people who like Romney, Perry, Gingrich, Kane. I mean, you find a group of candidates that people like. However, having said that, if there was a chance to have one more choice, any party would like to have, if you've got a good candidate, get into the middle of the race, because it just gives the voters more opportunity to have a better choice. And so I think that's what's happening here. And there's some people who particularly like him who think he should get into the race. Does that mean that he'll win? That's certainly to be determined.